Another very, very positive practice from the offense from everything I read. But what we are going to do is we're not going to go off of what I read. What we're going to do is we're going to go off of what somebody was actually there has to say about what happened last night. So let's welcome to the show for the first time Anthony DiBona, Pro Football Network. You can find him on social medias at DiBona PFN. Good morning, Anthony. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Phil. I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about the Eagles. I feel like there was a lot of stuff to be excited about for fans that were in attendance, and it was definitely an encouraging night.
Yeah. Let's just talk. I mean, you got to be exhausted. I mean, yeah, it's a late, long night going to a practice. But before we talk about the practice itself, we keep using the word practice over and over again here, and we use that cliche, Allen Iverson. It's practice. You know what I mean? We're talking about, but it's an experience for the Eagles. 50,000 fans, they said, were in attendance last night. Just talk about the experience of having 50,000 fans watching a team just go through drills. Like, it's got to be quite the experience.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. I mean, I was there, I think 5 or 6 years ago before I had any kids, and last night it was the first experience, a sports experience for my kids, my 4-year-old daughter, my 2-year-old son. So I kind of put my analyst hat to the side, and I was taking care of them while I was trying to keep up with what was going on. But yeah, it's just an unbelievable event, and you could see some players like Jalix Hunt, for example, that came from like a smaller school. They showed him taking the field with I think Josh Sweat, and you could just see he was just looking around, like he was like, "Whoa, this is just practice." I can only imagine what this looks like when the real game is going on and the stadium is full to capacity. But the whole lower bowl was full, a little bit of the upper level as well. But it was good, given how hot it was. It was a surprising outcome for
Oh, I
how many
wasn't even
fans
going to
showed
say
up.
that. Yeah, it was a hot one last night as
Yeah.
well. The thing that you said there a second ago really stuck out. I saw a lot of people like you, Eagles reporters, Eagles fan, like big time social media people taking their kids for the first time, and it's kind of an awesome way to introduce young kids because it's not the loud in the middle of the season a heated game against the Cowboys. It's a practice. Do they do anything special, for the fans in attendance outside of just watching the practice at an event like
So
that?
Yeah, so when you first enter the gates, they have like the little ball toss for the kids. There was like a bunch of different face painting stations set up, but
That's awesome.
my wife wasn't having that because she was worried about the heat and that it was gonna melt off my daughter's face. But they had a bunch of different like giveaways, and the drum line was out there. Photo opportunities with Swoop, the yard sale, which is always cool because it supports the Eagles Autism Foundation, but it has a ton of like player worn jerseys, practice worn jerseys, autographed memorabilia, things like that for like a quarter of the price that they would normally be. So there's a ton
Yeah,
of stuff going on. And the best thing about it, I feel like, is the affordability of it as well. Tickets were only $10. They go to a great cause. So people that can't afford those $150, $200 plus tickets to sit in the last section in the nosebleeds, this is a better opportunity for them. So it's fun.
absolutely. The only reason why I don't go is because the last two times that I bought tickets to go to the open practice, it got rained out. So just
Yeah.
for everyone else's sake, I have stopped buying tickets because I'm the bad luck jinx on that. So we don't get into that anymore. Davey, I think today's a walkthrough. They haven't actually said what they're doing, but I would expect today to be a very minor day. I know they're off on Saturday, but they went for almost 2 hours last night, right, Anthony?
Yes. And like I said, that heat and humidity was no joke. So I
Yeah,
wouldn't expect they are having a walkthrough today. I don't think it's going to be open to the media either. But yeah, so I don't expect them to do too much today on the field.
absolutely. All right, so let's talk about on the field what you saw last night, but also what you've been tracking over the last, week and a half of training camp. And let's start out with the guy we've been talking about all week this week because I made a bold statement that Jalen Hurts will win the MVP, the first Eagles quarterback to do that. Um, Jalen Hurts seems. I mean, we heard in the mini camp Jalen Hurts talk about it's 95% new, and that was very scary. But and defenses normally early in camp are ahead of the offense. But we are seeing this Eagles offense, specifically Jalen Hurts, almost a complete, in practice, albeit it, but almost a complete understanding of it already. What have you seen of Jalen Hurts, and why do you think he's figuring this out so much or so quickly? This offense.
Well, I think the main part of it is that, and he kind of mentioned it himself, is that he's been through this kind of scenario 8 times in the last 10 years or whatever it was, where he's working with a new offensive coordinator, learning a new scheme to where he's probably been involved in so many different systems that at this point he kind of has knowledge of everything. It's just a matter
Mhm.
of putting it together and the terminology that the coach uses. And in this case, Kellen Moore, it seems like he's introducing a much different offense than what they used in the past because
Mm.
it was evident in the first drive, and I uploaded the first team 11-on-11 session where you just see pre-snap motion on all, but I think one snap. You saw Jalen Hurts in the pistol, Jalen Hurts in an empty formation, Jalen Hurts under center, which he rarely did in previous years, and he's really rarely done it all in his entire career. So it's just I think it's a really encouraging start because, like you said, usually the defense is ahead at this point, but considering that they're kind of learning a new scheme and there's new pieces in place on that side, it seems like the offense is off to a hotter start, and Jalen Hurts definitely seems like he's going to be back in that MVP form heading into this upcoming season.
I thought I was going to ask about the motion when you mentioned all the motion because I'm still kind of confused why we haven't been, knowing Nick Sirianni is this progressive thinker, how we haven't had motion for the last couple years. I have no idea. But then you mentioned under center, the fact that he was under center, and I saw that, and I'm kind of shocked because I was talking with some other beat reporters earlier in camp. I'm like, how much are we seeing under center? And he's not, and everyone told me not as much as you would expect. And then literally play after play last night, video after video I see, floating around social media from all the reporters, Jalen Hurts under center. Um, do you feel confident Jalen can handle being under center? Because I know in Oklahoma he wasn't really under center much. He might have been in Alabama. I'm not really sure. But in his Eagles tenure, he definitely has not been under center. Is that a comfortability thing for him that he hasn't been, or has that just been the system that they've been running doesn't require him to be under center?
I think they kind of just tried to simplify things. Not saying that he can't handle it, but especially in college, it seems like everybody pretty much operates out of the shotgun. They wanted to do that spread look where the quarterback can make a quick read without turning his back to the defense. So it's going to be something new for Jalen Hurts, and I don't think they're going to primarily run it. It's not going to be like the base of their offense, but the fact that they will utilize it here and there, and there will be some different looks for the defense to have to worry about. And I think the best part about it is, given how successful the run game has been under Jeff Stoutland, you kind of get that going, and then all of a sudden now you can work on a play action rollout where you get Jalen Hurts on the run to his left or to his right, however they want to do it. Fake a handoff to Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Gainwell, Will Shipley, and then that really opens up things that weren't there in the past because you can only do so much when you're just faking an option or faking a handoff at a shotgun or pistol formation. Where, as if you're going under center, it kind of you can go with two tight ends and kind of make it look like it's a heavy run look, and next thing you know, it's a huge explosive play at play action.
This is something that Duck said here that I love to see because everyone said he can't read defenses as well as he should, but putting him under center does mean that he's figuring that aspect of it out as well. And I think it's a great comment from Duck there. Um, Back to the motion thing though. Um, do you have a theory on why they haven't used motion as much? Because it seems so obvious. They were the lowest team in the league in running or running motion percent wise last year. Probably have been for the last couple years. It seemed obvious they didn't do it. Was it also a Jalen Hurts comfortability thing, or was it just Nick Sirianni didn't believe in it?
I think it was more of a Nick Sirianni thing because Jalen Hurts has
Okay.
kind of used it in the past in college. I just
Mhm.
think that Nick Sirianni, for some reason, in that point of the offensive, like building out the offense, it was just, he kind of had just like a prehistoric take on it where they
Mhm.
were dead last in the league and it was by quite a wide margin. So the fact that they have guys like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and now Saquon Barkley, Paris Campbell, Johnny Wilson, the list, Dallas Goddard, the list goes on and on. But the fact that they weren't using it, but it's not even necessarily pre-snap motion. It was just like the fact that they didn't really use Devontae Smith and AJ Brown in different alignments pre-snap without even moving. Like you didn't really see them a bunch in the slot or switching sides on the outside or lining up in the backfield and then running a route out of there. It was just the way they were used was so weird. But now it seems like that's going to be changing quite a bit because I feel like Devontae Smith especially was lined up in a different spot almost every play during the first team 11-on-11 session. So I think that's encouraging to see. But I'm sure they kind of kept a little bit under wraps, but it seems like they were giving the fans a little bit of a tease last night during the practice.
Being there in person, we've heard the reports, and I don't think you've been at any other practices yet this year. Um, the reports coming out of practice how much faster Jalen Hurts looks, and not just on like the reads and stuff like that and the throws, just the physical health. Did you see that in person also last night? That he looks fresher, he looks healthier. The key word to me is healthier. And with the speed and stuff like that. Did you observe that as well last night?
100%. And you could see it from the moment he kind of even just faked the ball and showed the defense that he was going to run. And then when he kept it and actually ran with the ball, he was making cuts a lot quicker and more decisive than he was last year. I feel like in that Vikings game, things didn't seem right last season. And then after that, they kind of played it close to the vest. They weren't really saying much, but you could tell Jalen Hurts wasn't the same runner and that same rushing threat that he normally was. But so far, from what I've seen and from what you've read, like you said, it seems like he looks a lot better and he looks to be fully healthy. And that opens up so much more because Kellen Moore was asked about Jalen Hurts kind of being a +1 on offense due to his running ability. And it seems like they're going to utilize that because he kept the ball quite a bit last night as well. So I think that's definitely encouraging
So
given
how
how
do
he
you,
looked last season.
so you have Saquon Barkley now, obviously, who's going to be a major, aspect of this offense. You can't change Jalen Hurts. You don't want him to not be a runner, but you also want to protect him so he doesn't get banged up, so he stays fast, he stays healthy all year. How do you balance that? How do you design an offense where you let that threat of Jalen Hurts still be there, and that, but also protect him to an extent, so that last year doesn't happen again?
I feel like you don't really need to run him maybe like 15 or even 10 times a game. I feel like if you can kind of just keep the defense honest where he runs it maybe 3 to 5 times a game, that's not a tush push. I feel like that's
Yeah.
like the safe range. And even with Saquon Barkley, I've talked about it in the past. I don't think they're going to use him like a Christian McCaffrey where he's getting 25, 30 touches a game because he has those durability concerns and injury concerns from the past. So I feel like keeping him around 15 to 20 total touches a game while also keeping the defense honest with Jalen Hurts' legs is that happy medium that they're going to want to be in.
Yeah. Do you want them to? I think literally every show for 2 weeks now, I've had at least one tush push question. What I think is going to be the usage of that this year. So I'll just instead of the commenters saying it, I'll say it. How much of a drop off in usage of the tush push do you expect with Saquon Barkley?
I mean, I feel like that's where we're going to really see if Kellen Moore's making the decisions or if Nick
Yeah.
Sirianni's, because I feel like if they're still super aggressive on fourth down, I feel like that means Sirianni has a little bit more of a say in that regard. But I feel like the play was so effective that you can't just. I've seen some people say they're not going to use it at all now that Jason Kelsey retired, or they're only going to use it a handful of times. I feel like they're still going to use it a lot. I think 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, it's just such an unstoppable play that you kind of just use it until people can prove that they can stop it. So it'll be interesting to see if the NFL changes anything from like an officiating standpoint to try and kill it early in the regular season. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
You said something there about, is it Nick Sirianni's offense or Kellen Moore's with that? I still think it's Nick Sirianni will be the one making the decisions about being aggressive. I think he's probably communicated that to Kellen Moore. Look, we're not going to lose identity of being an aggressive team. You've got to figure out your offensive style around it. Something I put out there. I put out a poll. It's still running, so it's more for next week. But I'll put it out there to you, Nick Sirianni. There have been a lot of question marks on him about being in this CEO hands-off leadership role as the coach. But everybody was so critical of it coming into this camp and stuff like that. But I kind of feel like every day as it passes a practice, there are less and less people questioning or concerned. Like every day, it kind of just comes down a little bit that people are like, all right, I think this might work, because of what we're seeing from the offense in Kellen Moore. Have you lost confidence, gained confidence? Are you still in the it's a wait and see mode with Kellen Moore or with Nick Sirianni CEO role right now?
Well, I feel like he kind of did what he had to do to keep his job because
Yeah.
they knew that they needed to make a change at offensive and defense coordinator. They knew that the offense got stale. He even admitted himself. So to me, it's kind of I gained respect for Nick Sirianni because not a lot of coaches. Doug Peterson didn't want to do it. He didn't want to make the changes that the front office or the owner wanted to make him do. So Nick Sirianni said, "Hey, if I want to stick around as head coach and I have to make these changes and I have to swallow my pride and kind of let Kellen Moore run the offense, then so be it." But I think it's an encouraging sign. Obviously, if the team falls short again this year, then I think they're going to clean house and Sirianni's days might be over in Philadelphia as head coach. But I think so far he's doing the right things. And even looking back to when they hired him, I feel like he wasn't hired because he was some offensive guru that had this unstoppable scheme. It was more so that he had a great way of relating to players and having that personality off the field to kind of get the locker room to buy in. So now that's basically all he's really in charge of. He's playing kind of that Dan Campbell, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh role where he doesn't really call plays on either side of the ball, but he kind of keeps everybody together and runs the show from up top. So we'll see how it works out.
Yep, guys, we're talking with Anthony DiBona right here from Pro Football Network on Trending in the AM. Let's move to the defensive side. We got about 8 more minutes here with you. Because I see defensive questions coming in, Rodgers or Mitchell. opposite of Slay. First, before we get to the specifics, I mean, there's so much talent on the offense, but we've been so concerned with the offense. Defense, we're coming off an awful defensive, season, and we got a new coordinator, and you got a lot of young talent, but yet it seems like everybody's super positive about the defense. But yet every report from camp is that today was won by the offense. The next day, today was won by the offense. Normally the defense is ahead of the offense, especially when a new offensive system is put in place. Do you think that the defense is still just learning the Fangio system, or is the offense that just talented right now that this defense, all defenses aren't going to be able to handle it? Like, are you concerned from what you're seeing from the defense at all, big picture, or is it just an offense is that good?
I mean, I don't know if I'd be too concerned. I mean, the Eagles' offense, the talent there is pretty rare. If you look around the league, there's not a lot of teams that have that amount of talent, especially at quarterback, receiver, running back. The Eagles are just talented everywhere, especially with the
Mhm.
starters. So I wouldn't be too discouraged. And I feel like I've mentioned that I feel like there's a lot of questionable spots on the defense where guys are kind of either learning a new position or they have to prove that they can stay healthy or they're full-time starters for the first time. So I wouldn't be surprised if they struggle to start the season where they're giving up maybe 25, 30 points and people are going to be panicking, especially against the Packers. It might be a rough game week 1, but I just feel like they're going to take their bumps and bruises to start the season. But overall, I'm not too concerned about the defense right now.
So the big conversation is around the cornerback room. There's two new names, obviously Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, Isaiah Rodgers, James Bradbury still around. It's almost like it's not a cornerback room; it's a defensive back room because everyone's playing safety, everyone's playing slot, everyone's getting a chance to start and run with the ones opposite of Darius Slay. But the cornerback defensive back room is the fun topic for everybody. So as of today, 1 week from the first preseason game, so we're what, like 8 days into camp so far. Who do you think has the advantage to be the starter opposite of Darius Slay? And who do you want to see? Because that could be two different answers. Who you want to see start versus who should start at this point.
What's funny because right now they're 6 practices in, and Isaiah Rodgers was the first one up in 3 of them, and then Keely Ringo was the first one up in the other 3. So they're
Yeah.
kind of split 50-50 right now. I feel like long term, obviously Keely Ringo would be the better option because I feel like
Mhm.
you kind of get him those reps now, and then whenever Darius Slay moves on, you have Quinion Mitchell there, Keely Ringo on the outside, maybe Cooper DeJean in the slot, and that's your secondary for the next couple of years moving forward because they're all under contract for relatively
Mhm.
cheap. So I feel like that's the best case scenario. But right now, I feel like Rodgers has the upper hand because his quickness really stood out even in drills and the 11-11 last night. He's just it looks like he's beat, and then he just closes on the ball in like the matter of seconds. And he's so fast and he has great ball skills. And I feel like that's kind of been lacking in the secondary in recent years. There haven't been too many takeaways. So I think he'll help in that area. And he'll probably start to begin the season with maybe Quinion Mitchell in the slot, which a lot of people didn't expect, but he seems to be playing well there as well, even though it's new to him. So that's encouraging given that Vic Fangio said that he doesn't want to throw too much on young defensive players' plates, but they seem to be doing fine just so far.
And you say that, and there is a lot of young players on this defense. I mean, I don't think people realize how young this defense is, and not just in the secondary with Carter, Davis, Milton Williams in the middle. Bryce Huff is still fairly young. Even linebackers. I mean, people think Devin White's this 40-year-old linebacker. He's only 26 years old. He's only been in the league for 5 years. So there is a lot of young on this defense. But you mentioned, concerns, and one of my big concerns, obviously, Anthony commenting on Huff and Sweat getting pressure. Everybody's talking defensive backs. I've been keeping my eye mostly on the defensive line because, again, I'm concerned about Bryce Huff filling in for Hassan Reddick. Josh Sweat has not been as good as he's been in the past. I've been thoroughly encouraged by the reports on Nolan Smith, and I've kind of changed my opinion in the last 2 or 3 days that maybe it's not Huff replacing Reddick. Maybe it's Nolan Smith replacing Hassan Reddick. And that's when Nolan Smith was drafted. I said the first show I did after the draft, Nolan Smith has been drafted because Hassan Reddick will be gone after Nolan Smith. I predicted that, right from the get-go. So are you encouraged by Nolan Smith? Are you concerned like me on the defensive line as a whole not being deep enough?
I just think there's a lot of intriguing talent. It's just a matter of them putting it together because I'm much higher on Jalix Hunt than a lot of people too. I don't think
Love
he's going to contribute a bunch this season, but he's already shown flashes and played with the first team a little bit earlier in training camp. So that's a good sign. But yeah, I'm right there with you because I think Nolan Smith, I feel like he was him and Keely Ringo were 2 of the only bright spots for the defense down the stretch last season. I just feel like by the end of this year, I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith were your starting edges and Josh Sweat kind of got phased out because he's probably going to be leaving next season anyway. So in my opinion, I think Smith and Huff are the guys that really need to step up there because I'm not sure how well Sweat's going to fit in a 3-4 defense and kind of playing the edge in that role. He had an offsides penalty and then 11-on-11 last night as well. So that's apparently still happening with him. But plus he made a terrible choice switching to number 19. But that's another discussion for another day. But yeah, it's just I think Smith, I'm really high on him like you as well. And I think he's in for a big year this year that people might not be expecting.
Yeah, and this is a great comment from Duck. Nolan Smith might have had a bigger impact last year. If it was his shoulder, he dislocated his shoulder last year.
He had to have surgery.
Yeah. So and he wasn't himself till at least halfway through the season. I'm also concerned with the interior. Carter, Davis, Milton Williams. You took out Fletcher Cox and you really didn't replace who Fletcher Cox, even though he retired at the end of the season, was still having a pretty darn good year last year, considering he was the old, grizzled veteran of that line. I'm concerned there's not enough depth in the middle, and a lot is going to be expected of three guys that aren't used to playing big snaps.
Yeah, that's something I wrote about for PFN that especially Vic Fangio's scheme, he played his top three defensive tackles in Miami a ton of snaps. I mean, granted, they ended up having two of them ended up having the most sack reduction that they've had in their career, and Christian Wilkins parlayed it into a huge deal with the Raiders. But I just feel like the Eagles players are young and youthful enough to where they should be able to handle that amount of snaps, and it's going to be exciting because I think Milton Williams in a contract year, that's why I think it would be smart for the Eagles to kind of try to sign to an extension now. But I doubt his agency wants to do that because they know what Vic Fangio did with defensive tackles in contract years for Miami last year. So they're probably going to be willing to take their chances. But the Eagles have the talent in those three. But like you said, behind them you have Moro Ajomo, Gabe Hall, PJ Mustipher. Marlon Tuipulotu. I don't know if those guys are really too encouraging. I feel like that's a spot that they can maybe add another person at as they do go through final cuts and things like that. But that young trio is really intriguing. It's just a matter of, like you said, if they can handle a full workload or not.
Yep, absolutely. So obviously we got to get to the wrap-up process here because I know you're on a tight timeline here today. Overall, you're pretty confident right now. So you're feeling good about this Eagles camp. What do you got coming out this weekend on Pro Football Network's website? What kind of articles are you working on right now?
Well, I'll have my practice report coming up here today. That should be published at some point. So that's going to be a written recap of everything that I saw, what stuck out to me. We didn't really get into him a little bit on here, but Mekhi Becton started off a little shaky, but looked better down the stretch. So that's going to be a spot that people are going to be watching, looking forward to. And I'll just be keeping tabs on practice from the outside. Obviously, their first preseason game coming up as well. And PFN has me right about the league as a whole. So I like to focus on the Eagles, but I've got a lot of stuff coming out.
So the question, I told you, there's always a question. Every guest has to get asked the same question before the show ends. And we are on 3 in a row. So the last 3 guests have all answered this question the same way. So we're going to put you to the test. You can only watch one movie the rest of your life. It's got to be either Goodfellas or Godfather. What are you watching?
I got to go Godfather. I mean, I'm an Italian.
You broke the streak. It's been 3 straight Goodfellas guests. I love it.
Oh, no, sorry. So I can blame my dad for that. It was basically if that was on TV or if Rocky was on TV, it was always on in my house growing up. And my dad probably watched them 300, 400 times. So for that reason, thanks to my pops, I'd have to go Godfather.
All right, guys, make sure you guys are following Anthony DiBona. He pumps out great content, great analytic articles, great, perception articles. I try to read as many of them as I can at DiBona PFN. That's the easiest way to find you on all platforms, right?
Yes, that's correct. Twitter's awesome. Where I do most of my work. That's where most of my stuff's uploaded. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're going to have to get you on again another time, maybe in the middle of the week. Maybe we'll get a little bit, longer time. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your hands-on experience from last night's camp, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too. Guys, that was Anthony DiBona right there from Pro Football Network. Great guest, great guy. I mean, he does do some really good. I'm not an analytical guy, but when I read his articles, his analytic articles really do make sense to me. Because that's, I think, part of my problem with analytics in sports is I don't understand half of them. But he makes them very, very understandable, so I do appreciate it. And he's a great follow and a great get.